Hi, I'm Mena.
I'm Missa.
And welcome to another episode of Minutes with Eminem. Today we're going to be talking about another Apple TV show, The Morning Show, and we'll be talking about, what makes a bad person bad, who deserves forgiveness, what is forgiveness, and how can you redeem yourself? A lot of fun questions for us to explore while talking about some of the characters.
Like Mena mentioned, we'll be referencing two characters from The Morning Show, Mitch and Alex. The reason why we chose these characters is because of how they are portrayed in the show and just their entire journeys. And there's a lot of gray areas involved. For those who have watched the show, I'm just going to assume that you have watched the show at this point because we are going to spoil a lot of the show, at least season 1 and season 2 as of this moment. So let's start with the main antagonist, Mitch.
So Mitch, let's just start with Steve Carell is very, very charismatic. And I think that very much helps in this role because even though he's terrible, I'm like, oh, you're so funny. You're like a dad. You're kind of cute. And you're so fun to talk to.
I didn't watch The Office, so I didn't have all of those hang-ups. I've seen him in a lot of other stuff though.
You didn't
so
like
maybe
him in anything else?
But I can't really remember what I've seen him in at this point. I think the major thing I remember him from is The Office.
Fairs.
But yeah, he's very charismatic, even on the show, and his character is charismatic, and that's kind of how he was able to get away with this stuff. Let's talk about him.
So, he's been in the industry for decades. He's super successful. Women love him. Men love him. His wife tolerates him. It's all great. Basically, the main thing in the show is him, or at least the first season, but a little bit in the second season too, is he gets canceled. In case you haven't seen The Morning Show yet, there is a trigger warning for a lot of sexual content throughout the show, so just be aware before we dive into it. Getting into Steve's character, as mentioned by Miss San, Mitch is someone who has been successful for a long time. He's been famous and powerful and mingled with the rich. He's met politicians. He's met celebrities. He's, the person that people who turn on their TV every day want to see. And the show basically begins with him getting canceled. He has been sexually harassing and abusing members of his team, junior staffers for years. And it's coming to light now. And the first season is basically him running around going, I don't deserve this, what's going on? I didn't know I did anything wrong. And everyone else trying to pick up the pieces / keep the show going / change and be better. And Mitch is presented in a way that I like, where he claims not to know what he's done wrong. He thinks this is how things go. I'm a man in power and I sleep with junior women. It's normal, it's regular, there's nothing wrong with that. The world is too woke, we've gone too far. And that's the main thing for most of the season. It's him going, I haven't done anything wrong. I don't see why I'm in trouble. Why do I have to apologize? Everyone else was doing this. What is the issue?
And the very interesting thing about what happens after he gets cancelled. So, he's losing all his contacts and people don't want to associate themselves with him. He tries to save his face by saying, okay, I'm going to go to the network. I'm going to give an exclusive interview, where I tell my side of the story, because they always have their own version of events. But what I find very interesting is most of what he really wants to say is, these are all the people that knew about what I was doing, which makes it right, which makes it okay, because I haven't really done anything bad. They all saw it, they all ignored it, so that means they approved, and I wasn't actually doing anything bad. And that's kind of a way to say, why am I the only one getting cancelled? Why am I the only one whose career has to take a hit when so many other people have gotten away with it? And that is what really makes me feel like, okay, this person has not even accepted the fact that he has done a bad thing, or he has been doing a bad thing. For him, it's just about, how do I get back to that level of status that I had before? And if I'm going down, I'm going to take everyone down with me.
But you know what? I like that because I think, one, it's realistic, but I think it raises a good question. If you're doing bad things because everyone around you is doing bad things or saying those bad things are okay, or at least not saying that they're wrong, how can you know to not do those bad things? If it's normalized in the area around you, are you a bad person? If you're a person in an environment that is negative and you do those things, can you be blamed? Or is it everyone that needs to be blamed?
I feel like you can be blamed, especially if some of your victims have come to you and said, hey, this is how you made me feel, and this is what you did. I feel this way, I feel that way. You can't say, well, everyone else is doing it, so fuck your feelings. You can't say that. And, he was doing these things while he was married with kids, right? Yes, kids. With kids. So obviously, let's even forget about the assault and the harassment and all of that. Let's just talk about your marriage. You're already a bad person for cheating, and you know you were cheating because you hid all of it and you knew to hide it. So that means you knew you were doing a bad thing. So
I get that. I definitely think that Mitch was wrong. I think his come to Jesus moment is something that I'm appreciative of. I think it shouldn't have had to come to that. You don't have to wait till the news is talking about you being a rapist before you decide you shouldn't do anything or you should change. But I appreciate him being able to recognize, hey, maybe I should look inwards. And it took him a moment. Like at first he was like very defensive, but when he gets to the point, and we see this way more in season 2, where he's just asking himself, am I the problem? Why am I doing this? Is this something that shouldn't be done? I like that, and I think it's important to like portray that kind of thing, because a lot of people do bad things and either never get called out, or when they get called out they get defensive. And I think it's important for people to be able to be like, okay, I hate it, I've been called out, everybody hates me, and instead of doubling down and being like, no, this is fine, being able to look inwards and say, how do I change and how do I do better? And
yeah, but it's very important to point out that, like, yes, I'm really glad that he had that moment. I'm really glad that, he got to the point of self-reflection. But I want to note that Mitch is not a monster. Like, he's someone who has loved ones, and, he has friends that he has had for years, people who are close to him, people who respect him, people who look up to him. So it's not like this is just a horrible human being. So he has had multiple opportunities to look inwards, and I'm sure he has done that in other facets of his life, but in this particular facet of your life you chose to keep going, and that is where I have a problem with it. Because when you finally say, okay, I'm going to self-reflect, you're not doing that because like somebody has changed your mind, or like somebody has held a mirror up to the things you are doing. You're doing that because you have no other way to get out of this other than to apologize and like be remorseful. He had lost every single thing. Like he literally couldn't eat gelato in peace in Italy. So like I think it's important to note that is the point where he starts to say, okay, because if it happened once he was exposed, I would have extended him a little bit more grace. But what happened after he was exposed was he wanted to take other people down with him. He went to the person that he sexually assaulted and he harassed her even more and blamed her for using him to get ahead in her career. So this is somebody who definitely understands the power imbalance. He definitely understood the gravity of what he did when he was doing it. So it's like, are you really sorry, or have you lost everything else that this is now your final way of getting back into people's good books?
That's true. And I think that kind of just poses the question, does it matter if someone does the right thing for the right reasons, or do you want them to do the right thing no matter what? Because whether he means it or not, if he apologizes and he changes, isn't that better than whatever the alternative is?
I would rather you mean it, because I am a firm believer that like people don't really change as much. You have to give them a good reason to change. And I'm also a firm believer, like, you can't really pretend for too long. So if he's someone who's just doing all these things because he feels like it's the right thing to do, but he has like, ulterior motives behind it, he's just trying to do it because he doesn't truly believe in what he's doing, I feel like to get to a point where, okay, he feels like, all right, I'm safe now. I can actually start like resuming what I was doing before. So like, I don't know. That's just kind of how I feel.
Okay, so 2 points there. One, I think people can change. And I think it's important to believe that people have the capacity to change, because if you don't, it goes like, it's a problem in 2 directions. If you're a good person that starts doing bad things, it's easy like, well, this is a good person, maybe there's a good reason, or maybe we should overlook it. And conversely, people go through phases in life where they develop and change. Like maybe you did a bad thing before.
Okay, let me just give a disclaimer here. Like I don't believe that people can change. I believe that the catalyst for change is very, very important. And like the reason behind changing is very, very important, because think about people who are struggling with like maybe substance abuse or like just a lot of other things. It's like the reason is actually the most important thing. A lot of the times, your family will put you in rehab, your family would pay for your rehab, your family would run multiple interventions. But it's until you decide, I want to change for myself, this is bad, until you reach your own personal rock bottom, and that might be like 20, 50 inches or 15 meters below everybody else's around you. At the end of the day, ultimately, I feel like what really gets them out of it, it comes from like within. It comes from, I want to change, I want to do better for myself.
That's true, but I think it's not fair to compare legit addictions where your brain won't free you.
Fair enough. But like, that was just the first thing that popped into my
get
head.
what you mean. It's just that, like, when the other thing you said about like people will change back, there is so much that we do as human beings that's fully just based on societal expectations and beliefs. Like, we do things that we don't want to do, or we do things that we don't want to do all the time because it's expected of us, or we know that that's what we're supposed to do. And there's certain behaviors that people will not engage in front of people, even if they want to. Like, they'll try and do it in secret, but they won't do it publicly. And at the very least, I think it's important to give people the chance to not do it publicly. Like, if we catch them doing it in private, it's a problem. But if someone says they've changed and we don't see them doing the bad thing anymore, I think it's important to give them a chance. That being said, there's levels to the bad thing you can do and expect forgiveness for. Because I don't think Mitch was a monster, and you said that, and I don't expect his victims to forgive him. But I, kind of thinking about the society we live in and the world we live in, I want it to be possible for people to do bad things and then to come back from there.
It depends on the level of bad things. To be honest, I feel like the world there's just so many horrible people in the world. And like, for me, I feel like there is a line. I don't know. I feel like certain people are just irredeemable. Even if you are a serial killer who has killed 100 people, and now you want to come to Jesus, no, fuck you.
See, that's the thing. I disagree with you. I also have a line, but I don't think a lot of people are terrible people. I don't think a lot of people are redeemable. I think people are products of their society and their community. And that's why when we talk about Mitch, I'm like, what he did was bad, but he was in this industry for decades and everyone was doing it. It doesn't make it okay, but literally,
not everyone was doing it. Yanko wasn't doing it.
Yanko was new.
Daniel wasn't doing it.
Daniel was new. Like, they were all younger. And I'm not saying that everyone was doing it, so it's okay. But literally, everyone was aware of what was going on, covering it up and pretending not to see it. And that's because that's just how things are. And
you don't have to partake.
You don't have to.
Especially if you have a wife and a family.
I agree.
You don't have to partake
completely. But it's very easy to. And that's why I think making it an individual thing versus a community thing is the problem. Because, Mitch is gone, but Fred is still there. Like,
Fred is gone.
I mean, now he's gone, but they paid him all this money. Like, it's not making real change when you focus on one person instead of the root of the issue. And I think that's my thing here, where I'm like, Mitch did a horrible thing and he should be punished, but the self-reflection was good and is necessary and should be encouraged in others. It doesn't mean, just because you do the self-reflection doesn't mean that everyone's gonna be like, oh, you're fine now, we forgive you. But when people do it, we should encourage it so that more people will look inwards. And I get what you mean in terms of it being performative, because someone can say, oh, I've realized I've done something wrong. But
what does that do? What does that do to the victims? Because, see, I agree that the self-reflection is good. I like that towards the end of his life, he started to look inwards. He started to really understand the gravity of what he was doing. But what does that truly mean? Let's assume that he didn't, and another trigger warning for what I'm about to say. Let's assume that he didn't commit suicide and he truly had changed. What is really expected of him from now on? Like, he's supposed to just kind of get back into the industry and like keep going, and then the victims are supposed to just be seeing him around like doing things, and everyone's like, oh my god, you've changed, like congrats to you. Like, what do we really want? Like, do we want, because he has to be,
but like punishment doesn't mean, like, him becoming a better person doesn't mean that everything goes back to normal. It doesn't mean like he gets back his host spot. Like, he shouldn't get that job back. He abused that power, and what he did can't be taken back. But he probably should be able to just exist in the knowledge that he was a bad person and needs to do better in his day-to-day life.
So he just, gets a job at McDonald's or what?
I mean, but how is that different from him being canceled right now? He's in Italy living the time of his life. Everyone hating him and thinking he's a bad person is also not helping the victims.
Yeah, but I'm just like trying to understand, like, how does someone like him actually move forward and properly reintegrate himself with the society?
I think it's more about sowing seeds for the future versus right now. Because there are so many people like Mitch, those who have been caught, those who haven't been caught, and they're also just existing in society. If all of them start reflecting and start being better, it means like in a generation there will be less Mitches and less people who think it's okay to be Mitches. And it's also the way they raise their kids or train their subordinates that come in. It's important for these people to change, because if they don't, they're just in that system and more people coming in will repeat.
I take issue with when people say things like, everyone's doing it, this is the culture. Culture, at the end of the day, is created by people, is made up of people. And I feel like it's a very easy way for you to say, everyone is doing it, so I'm doing it. Because ideally, and like every human beings are complicated, we're all layers. Ideally, we are all independent people who think for ourselves. You can't come into... I said ideally. In an ideal world, I said ideally.
Yeah.
You should be able to come into an environment as a human being, as an adult, and say, this culture is bad, it's horrible, I'm not going to contribute to it. I may not have the power or energy to change it, but I'm not going to contribute to it. And I feel like once we start saying things like, oh, it was the culture and the environment, it's kind of like giving way to like people just being able to do what they want and then know that either they get away with it for as long as they can, and whenever they get cancelled, it's like, all right, that's the time for me to do the work for self-reflection. Because let's say Mitch self-reflected and he actually truly became a good person. Okay, what about the other 20 horrible men at UBA? Are we going to have to cancel each and every one of them as well in a public way before they actually say, okay, let me self-reflect? Like, at what point do we actually say, like, this person is just bad and you need to make better decisions? Like, I understand that, like, that's a way to move forward, but it just sucks that, it takes this, like, very public, embarrassing moment where you are cut off from, like, everybody for there to be any real self-reflection, because that cannot happen to everybody. Not everybody is Mitch. Not everybody is on Mitch's level. There can be someone who is, like, somewhere, like, mid-level person working at UBA doing the same thing, and, like, maybe they reported to HR, but it didn't cause that much of a big thing in his life. So maybe he just moves to a separate company and just keeps doing what he's doing. So it's like, where does it end?
But that's why I think saying everyone does this is important, because I get what you're saying. It's like, it's a cop-out, but I think it's the opposite. I think when we say everyone is doing this, or this is the culture, or it's a societal norm, it should make us go, we need to change the culture. We need to change everyone. We need to change the norm. It shouldn't be, oh, everyone is doing it, so I should do it. It should be, everyone is doing it, so we're going to focus on everyone. Like, we're going to say everyone is doing this bad thing and this thing needs to stop, instead of you are doing the bad thing.
Culture? How do you change it? Like, see, if someone like Mitch actually truly changed and got back into UBA and made it his life's mission to change the culture and make sure that everyone who was engaging in something like that either got fired or punished, or like created real consequences and like just created a better culture, that's a good thing. But at the same time, it's like the victims.
But that's the thing, I don't think it has to be Mitch. Like, I think Corey and Bradley are a good example of someone new stepping into an environment, seeing that things are fucked up and going, okay, like, everything needs to change. Like, the focus shouldn't be, when Corey and Bradley came in, it shouldn't have been, oh, we're getting rid of Mitch. It should have been like, everything goes on, especially someone like Corey that has power. You have the power to hire people, and he brought on, the lady in the second season, and she wanted to make some change, and it was hard, and it's hard because everyone is part of the problem. And that's why, even though I think Mitch was wrong for everything that he did, and I have no sympathy for him that outweighs the sympathy I have for his victims, his quote-unquote badness is important to show, because we need bad people to feel bad. Even if the last thing they do is feel bad and then die, we need people to look back at what they did and feel remorseful for it, and not just think, oh, everyone is doing too much, it's fine, what I did was okay. Because a remorseless society will continue to be bad. A remorseless environment will continue to grow horrible, terrible things.
Yeah, I totally agree. He needs to feel bad. I think where I struggle is like, how do we move forward? How do they reintegrate into the society after the horrible things that they have done? And I just hate that the catalyst has to be this huge event in your life for you to actually say, okay, maybe you're bad. Not the loved one, your loved ones telling you, not your wife telling you why you're not coming home. Not your
your kids miss you.
Yeah, your kids miss you. Not all the victims coming to tell you in confidence, not even in confidence, but just coming to you and saying, hey, this is what you have done. No, that didn't make you think. It's only when everybody in the world has shamed you that you're now like, oh man,
but
maybe I'm bad.
But do you feel like it depends what the crime is though? Because let's say what she did was, I don't know, let's say you steal a bag of rice every week. Like, you do it
It definitely depends on the crime.
Exactly. Because public shaming is something I'm a fan of. Like, it's so bad on so many levels, but I think it's very effective in a very specific way. Oh my God, nobody should quote me on that. It's like, please don't like shame people because you don't like what they do. I'm talking about societal ills that we all agree are bad, not, you know what, I don't even want to get into specifics. But that being said, I think it's very important as a tool, but I also think the way we wield it and the way we view crimes or bad behavior determines how we feel about that. Because moving on to someone like Alex here, she basically got canceled on Twitter in the show, and also in the first season kind of canceled-ish, where it's like, oh, you're friends with Mitch, you didn't know about this, or even when the book was coming out, she kept getting minorly canceled because she was involved in bad things to a less degree. You know, do you think she's someone that doesn't deserve to reintegrate?
I think she deserves to reintegrate. It's just a matter of her reasons and like what finally pushes her, because throughout season 1 and season 2, all she cares about is looking good.
Yes.
She doesn't care that she has overlooked these things being done and she was complicit and she has, you know, like just had certain relations with Mitch. She doesn't actually even take the time to think and sit down and be like, I have done all these actions, this is what's happening to Mitch. Because that's a perfect example. She should look at what's happening to Mitch, right? It should cause some sort of ripple effect within the company. Like, people who have been doing this should be like, oh wow, like, let me reflect, this is a bad thing, everybody's telling me it's bad, everybody's shaming me, like, maybe I should change. But she just kept digging and digging herself into this hole. She kept lying because all she cared about was looking good. And I think Mitch also really, really cared about looking good. And it's like only when she was at the verge of looking bad, where she had lied, the book was coming out, there was nothing she could do anymore. She's like, all right, I'm gonna be real with you guys, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna show you, like, come on.
Okay, so then looking at Mitch and Alex, Mitch has done just worse than Alex. But I think he was way more able to look at himself and say, I've done bad things, than Alex is. I think Alex is very...
Because he was harshly cancelled.
Yeah, but so do you think that if Alex was harshly cancelled, she would change? Because my girl's plan was to just quit the day before the real canceling was coming. She's like, okay, y'all are gonna cancel me, I'm gonna dip, thank you so much for your time, bye. She just didn't want to handle it, and that's fine, you know.
Yeah, I think if Alex was harshly cancelled,
she would change, for real?
She would change. I think so, because she's someone who really, really cares about like what people think about her and like how she's portrayed by the public.
I don't know. I think when looking at Mitch's relationships with the closest people in his life that he quote unquote cares for, and then looking at Alex's relationships with the people she's closest with. So for example, her producer, who is in love with her, okay, and he's like willing to give up his whole life for her, and just he's like that guy who has like the fetish where they beat you up. He keeps going back to her even though she's horrible to him, and she keeps having moments where she recognizes what I do to you is unkind and unfair, and I love you and you've been here for me for years, and then she'll be like, anyway, back to my evil. Or even with Bradley, where it's like they'll have moments of almost being close and she's like back to putting herself first. Or Mitch, who she loved so much that she was contemplating having a child with, and she would have like secret relation, you know, she'd go sneak into his house and hope the journalists wouldn't see him.
Yeah, you see, that's exactly what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is the reason why she could easily like have these little moments and just sweep them under the rug and just go back to her fancy life is because the public had no idea of all of these little things. So she was still good in the face of the public. So she didn't need to reflect. She didn't need to look inward. She could just be like, all right, I'm just going to ignore you in the hallway and go, move on with my fantasy life. And that is my main issue. Like, why does it have to take something so extreme? Like, Alex had so many chances to redeem herself. Literally, and then she does it a little bit and then she just falls right back into it, and I'm like the moment she gets that feeling of America loves you again, it's like back to being bullshit Alex.
But it's human nature. It's so easy to do bad things when you're getting away with it and you're being rewarded for it, and people change when they feel bad stimulus. Like, if people are booing you every time you walk down the street, you're gonna do what you need to do to make them stop booing you. It is just what it is, especially if, like, there's no reason for you to otherwise stop the bad thing, like, other than morality. And, like, who cares about morality when you have all the money and power and excitement? It doesn't make it okay. But, like, you know, when we talk about the children of the rich and famous, and we're just like, these people are just raised in a different world from the rest of us. They cannot even grasp certain things. And I feel like that's what it's like to be a powerful person, be a politician or celebrity or whatever. Life is just not normal to you. You can't understand consequences in the same way. And I think that's why, on one hand, it's really easy for us to say we want to cancel people and, you know, talk shit about people on the internet or call them ugly or say they're stupid or whatever, because most of us will never experience something on that scale and they're not necessarily real people to us. And also, like, okay, being insulted on the internet isn't, like, worse than not having to pay your rent or something like that. But for them, that's the harshest thing that can happen to them, is people on the internet being mean to them, which can be awful. But you can also turn off the internet and go to Italy and enjoy your vacation. Like, the consequences, you don't even really have to feel them. Your biggest consequence is canceling. And on the show, you know, they talk about it a lot. I've been canceled. They don't talk about, you know, they infer, oh, I've lost this sponsorship or something, but you're still a millionaire. Oh, I'm getting divorced from my wife and I have to give her this property. Okay, but you still have 5 other properties. There's no other way to hold you accountable, because you've kind of, the way we've structured life is that if you have money, you can do anything, and they have money.
But, like, what is it about being rich that really, like, gets rid of your conscience? Because these people were not, like, okay, even if they were born rich, like, let's assume they weren't. They were at some point a normal person. And now the richer they got, the more horrible they became. And I just want to understand, like, is it the industry that does it to them, or is it just the fact that the consequences get, like,
they disappear?
Yeah.
I think it's a mix of both. I think, you know, being wealthy and having no consequences really impacting your life in a real way means you can kind of just do whatever you want. You have access to anything, and nothing bad will happen to you when you do nothing. And without a conscience, there's nothing stopping you. And I think, I've said "and" so many times in this sentence. And I think the episode where Mitch is kind of talking to Dick Landry and he's saying, oh, we're the same. The world is so harsh. We should be allowed to harass and grow women. And Mitch can recognize that that is too much. Even if he's allegedly struggling to get why what he did was bad. To him, it's like, that is a line that is too far. And similarly, when he finds out, trigger warning, that Hannah's dead, that's what pushes him. It's like, his bounds of morality are just so far stretched already, but there's still room for him to go, oh God, that was too much. And those are the things that make him change, unfortunately. So you either need to, like, internally just wake up by yourself and be like, this is too much, or you need a very powerful external force. And being canceled for real, not just, oh, like, I feel like a lot of people complain about being canceled, but, like, being actual, losing opportunities, people in your life being too scared to interact with you, is the closest thing to your spirit moving inside you. Like, that's it. Like, what more can we do? If we can't really, I mean, I guess we could take away money from bad people, but, like, what if you're poor? Because they're quote unquote bad people who don't have money. Although it's easier to be horrible and rich. So
I feel like you can take away their money. That's a start.
I agree. I think taking away his money would have been good. And maybe, you know, redistributing it to those he's harmed. But then what do you do for someone like Alex, who doesn't necessarily have a clear victim? A lot of the bad things she did weren't necessarily just out of spite, but were more of her surviving in the industry as a woman. Like, it doesn't make it okay, but things like taking down Laura, where she didn't intend to do it, she was, you know, gossiping about someone who was homosexual, which is not okay. But 30 years ago, very realistic. They're just like, oh wow, she's gay, that's bad. That was a harmful thing she did, but she wasn't the only one gossiping.
It doesn't matter because this was your close friend, and even if you were gossiping, you could have at least supported her when the whole thing happened.
How do you punish her for that? Like, Laura's successful and rich and famous. Like, her feelings were hurt and it was something she was upset about. But how do you punish Alex for that? How does Alex fix that?
She loses money.
Does that help Laura? Is that about the victim?
It's not about the victim at this point. It's just about making sure that there aren't any additional victims anymore.
So that's what I'm saying. So, like, if right now she's changed and she does better, is taking away her money saving any future victims?
Yeah.
How?
If it's going to make her reflect, then...
But, like, I'm saying, like, if she's already reflected. If
she's not already reflected.
No, I'm saying hypothetically. If she had already reflected, but she was rich, I'm saying, like, we're taking away her money.
Reflected, why?
And inside her spirit, she was like, this is bad. I shouldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I really, that's the best case scenario. Like, you know, people doing bad things and one day they wake up and they're like, wow, I should stop. As opposed to it having to be a whole saga. Like, now the network is struggling. Now, you know, like, everybody has been pulled into... Yanko and his babe, who were in a consensual relationship, now have to start, like, running around. Like, it actually... It's inconvenient for a lot of other people just because of this thing that you have decided to do.
And that's the thing, you know, earlier on you said that people should be able to see that Mitch is facing repercussions for his behavior, so they should internally want to change, but they're not feeling those repercussions. And because it's framed as Mitch is the bad guy, it's easy to just pass it off. It's like, oh, Mitch and I are doing the same thing, but Mitch is a bad guy. I'm not a bad person. And I think that's why collective change is more important than focusing on the individual most of the time. But when something is endemic, I think it shouldn't just be, oh, let's get rid of this person and laugh it off and keep it pushing. Alex is, arguably a bad person. Like, she has moments that are less bad. You know, at the end of the first season, when she works with Bradley to get that broadcast on the news against the network's desires, it was important and made a positive change, you know. But she's selfish, she's self-serving, she looks out for her career above all other things. And she's also a coward in the sense that she's unwilling to stand up for what she believes in until it's beneficial to her or until she thinks there's nothing left for her to lose.
Because I don't think, throughout the show, I don't think she did anything that was selfless.
I think the broadcast was selfish. She wasn't in for herself, but she quit afterwards. Like, she did it because she thought it was the right thing to do.
She quit because they were going to push her out anyways.
But she didn't have to do the broadcast. It didn't help. Like, she didn't do it with the thought that it was going to be good for her.
No, but she did it because she was feeling guilty. If Hannah didn't end up dying, if the whole thing didn't become this big thing where she now actually had to, because, you know, we mentioned that she has these moments where she's like, oh wow, like, this is serious, this is real life, somebody has died, people have been hurt, you know, let me do the right thing. And, like, if it comes at the right time, then a good thing actually happens. But other than that, after that, she goes, you know, to reflect or whatever, and she starts writing a book.
Okay,
because she wants to tell her side of the story. First of all, that is also another way to get her even richer and to make her able to twist things. So she wasn't going to put her relationship with Mitch in that book. She submitted it to the publisher, and the publisher was like, please go back and actually write something in this book because you didn't actually give any expose or something, like, why are people going to buy your book? And then she was obsessing over, like, Maggie Brenner's book, that just because Maggie printed out something that was the truth, but she just didn't want people to know. So, like, I feel like a lot of the times where she was like, she did a good thing, it's like she had a few moments where she felt guilty, or ultimately either she had lost her lifeline and she wanted to look good to the public or do something, and then, you know, mic drop and go out, you know, like that kind of thing. It wasn't really, I want to do a good thing.
But do you think she's a bad person?
I don't know.
And if so, why is she a bad person? Like, I
don't think it's that black and white.
I agree. But I think the way we talk about how people are and, you know, what kind of retribution they have to pay or how their lives will be after we've quote unquote punished them is based on if we think they're a good person or a bad person. I think that's the starting point. Because if you think someone is a bad person, there is no atonement they can make. There's no change that they can give that means they are allowed to be forgiven or let back. Like, if Mitch is a bad person, it doesn't matter what he does. He's a bad person. We shouldn't forgive him. We should keep him outside at all times. If we think he's a good person, then yes, he did a horrible thing, but maybe we can work away from that.
Yeah, but he did multiple horrible things.
Oh yeah, but I think he's a bad person.
Yeah, but I don't think there are, like, bad people and good people. I feel like it's, you know, product of society and certain circumstances.
I feel like we've somehow just swapped stances.
Yeah, we've somehow swapped stances. But like, yes, people can be redeemed.
Do you think Mitch could have been redeemed?
I think he would have continued doing what he was doing if he didn't get cancelled.
Okay, but after his cancellation, do you think he could be redeemed?
What does redemption mean in this situation?
And understanding that he is no longer the person that he was. He has truly changed. Not a belief that he needs to get back into the same position or be given money or even lauded for that change, but the belief that you, Timothy, that you have, that he is now a better person. But do you think that was something that was possible for Mitch after he got canceled?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I believe that because he was actually a really bad person before that. So like any improvements is actually him being a better person. Like if I actually have to say it like that. Like,
okay, could you see him being a good person?
Yes, I could see him being a good person, and I've mentioned multiple times before in this episode. But my main issue is the catalyst.
No, but I'm saying with the catalyst being the same. So him getting canceled after his cancellation, can you see him being a good person if he changes?
Yeah, if he changes, I can see him being a good person.
But the catalyst being that he was canceled.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like that. I really don't like that at all. The fact that you have to be cancelled on that level before you can change and become a good person.
I agree, but I think his behavior with Paula, I don't want to say her name wrong, is indicative of some change. Maybe not all the change, but he was clearly like, this has to be an interaction where the boundaries are clear and there's no, up until the end where he was ready to die, then he was like, all right, we're gonna fuck, it's all good. But before that, he tried really hard to keep it, not necessarily professional because they're clearly friends, but within the limits of anything that can't be seen as him overstepping.
Yeah, you see, my problem with Mitch is he knows what he's doing when he does it. He's not the kind of bad person that just truly believes that what he's doing, like that he hasn't done anything wrong. So all along, he knew what he was doing. He knew that he was cheating on his wife. He knew that he was, taking advantage of his power at work and, harassing girls who are young and like who are naive. I wouldn't call them all naive, but he actually knew what he was doing. So for me, when you say, oh, he has changed, it's like, you don't change immediately, because I know you mentioned something about society, right? Society tells us what's acceptable to do and what's not acceptable. So the fact that he immediately knew how to behave when he wanted to change was like, the right thing to do. You know how to be a decent human being. You refuse to do it up until this moment. Because if it's like, oh, he was researching, like, oh my God, like, what have I done? What's the bad thing? Like, how should I? Then I'll be like, oh, like, this guy he really wants to learn. He doesn't know. No, he knew how to apologize to the people who mattered. He knew how to tell them, I'm sorry. He knew how to say, oh, this is what I've done. So he knew all along, and that's like my main issue. And that's to say he's not redeemable. I just wanted to because I hate when people get cancelled and then it's a thing of, they didn't really know. Let's tell you the bad thing you have done. Let's tell you about how much you've hurt these victims. Let's tell you about, power imbalance. Let's tell you about grooming. Let's tell you about... No. A lot of them actually do know what they're doing, and they do it anyway because it's a culture and they can get away with it. So he did know that he was doing a bad thing. I
agree. And I think in a lot of television and movies, they do have... I think they have extremes. They either have the evil character who's like, oh, ha, 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 I'm going to, destroy the planet, who is extremely aware of the bad things that they do and relishes in it. Or they have the other extreme where it's someone who's like, oh, I have no idea what's going on. It's bad to kill? Oh no! And it's usually not that. It's usually somewhere closer in the middle or closer to the first, where it's like people who are in places of power know that they can get away with doing bad things because of just how things are structured. And I think it's just, I guess my main thing is the structure is more important. So yeah, Mitch sucks, but more importantly, the entire network sucks.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like they suck for covering up for Mitch for years. They suck for throwing him out and then pretending, oh, everything has changed. They suck for letting Frank collect that money to buy him off, which is basically rewarding him for bad behavior. And I think their suck is worse than Mitch's suck, because he harassed 10 women. That organization has allowed 1,000 women to be.
Yes, but let's go to the beginning. So at the start of UBA, right? There was one person, maybe there was one man, and he decided I'm going to do this bad thing. And maybe he hired 2 other men. One of them, at dinner, they were having dinner at the table. He mentions casually how he did this thing. Ha ha ha, it's so funny. And the other one's like, and the rest of them are like, wow, like, you can just do that? Like, that's bad. He's like, who's going to check me? And everyone's like, I'm going to join you. Those are 3 bad people. So at what point do we accept that, like, there's just a lot of bad people in this world?
I don't think...
And they create, like, cultures, because that's how it starts, right? Then after those 3 people, the more people who join, it now becomes, oh, there's a culture of the entire company. But like, it actually always starts small. Like, and it takes a good person to come into that. Maybe there's 2 people doing this and actually stand your ground and like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I have a family. Like, this is actually bad. You don't have to do it. It's, I don't know. It's crazy.
I agree. And I also just think it's hard because it's easy to talk about in theory, these 3 men just showed up out of nowhere.
You want to impress your boss.
Yeah, like it's just a lot of things, but you're right. Individuals should be held accountable, but change should be systemic in my opinion. And that's why Alex's bads are just interesting, because most of the bad things she does, like we mentioned, are based on her business. Or they're kind of like just regular bad is the best way I can put it. Like, okay, having an affair is bad, but like, people have affairs all the time. Like, does that make it okay? No. But like, is that as bad as killing a baby? No. So it's just, she's bad because of lots of little gray things that could easily change or be improved upon. But she's just like a little bit narcissistic and just unwilling to change. But then it's so much easier to look at Mitch and be like, you're bad. You assault women. But Alex is just as responsible for the entire organization being bad as Mitch is, because without Alex you can't have Mitch. And I think that's my main thing here, was like, they're all feeding into each other. And you're right, there are people. Yanko is great. He's like, he wants to do better, but he got suspended because he punched a racist. Like, how do you even do better in situations like this? So yeah, I don't know, it's all really messy. It's a really good show and they're all really complex. And again, casting Jennifer Aniston and Steve Carell definitely helped.
Reese Witherspoon doing her thing again. Love it.
But looking at them, it's easy to see them as real people because we get to see insight into their lives. And, we see Alex go to bed and cry and feel bad. And we're like, oh, but you know what? All those people you're hurting, does it cancel out? Like, Mitch, I'm sorry you're lonely in your giant house.
If I watched a clip of Mitch being lonely along with a clip of the 10 women.
Like, exactly.
It's like, all right.
There a lot of change needs to happen, but it's also, I think, important to just assess how we view people as bad or good. And we're not going to really talk about any other characters, but someone like Corey, I would argue, is mostly good, and then does like one huge bad thing by outing Bradley, and it's like, okay, what do I even do with this? Like, what you did was really, really, really bad, but up until this moment, you've been generally good. So what do I do with this? So I just think how we look at people as a whole and then their actions is really important in how we judge them. But Mitch is dead now, so it don't really matter.
We shouldn't laugh about that, but
do you think Alex is gonna like change for the better next season?
I think she's going to try. And I think she's going to have more successes than she did last season, in season 2.
I agree. I just want to point out something that's interesting to me is that like a lot of the main characters are just old. Like, not old like 80, but these are not 20-year-olds. They've been who they've been for 40, 50 years. Are you going to change? Even if you want to, can you change at 50?
You can. I can try hard.
Like, you try really hard.
I can do anything. For Christ.
And I think that's part of why Alex has struggled so much. Even when she has moments where she's like, I want to do better. You've been kind of a shitty person for the last 20, 30 years. It's not easy to change.
It's quite easy because somehow everyone around her still believes in her, still believes that she could change. So I feel like she can change. Even something like promising Daniel the anchor job, it's like somehow he believed that. Somehow, and obviously you can argue like he didn't really know about the intricacies of her life. He didn't really know that Alex was a bad person. But like somebody like Chip, who kept coming back, he probably sees something in her and feels like, you know what, there are moments where she treats me nice, so maybe she's not really a bad person.
I think Chip has no self-esteem or self-worth whatsoever, and that's why instead of staying at a job where he was happy at with a fiance who loved him, he's running after this woman and lying about having COVID. His problems, it's up to God at this point. But yeah, I really want to see how Alex continues to grow. I think Mitch's death will be another really powerful catalyst for the show, the same way him getting outed and Hannah dying, and I think it's important too. Like, also, it's really fun to talk about this stuff because, it's a TV show, but for real, there are literally so many media conglomerates just let's use the US because that's where the show is based on. Just like, you guys all have 10 men just like this were horrible, if I'm being minimally generous. Like, that's scary and that's so sad. So I'm hoping stuff like this just changes the way people view these things. Not to be overly topical, like Lisa LaFlamme, she's a news anchor, or she was a news anchor at CTV. She was in the role for years and years. She's iconic. She has silver hair. She was fired this year, and part of it was there were leaked information about the execs talking about how they didn't like that her hair was gray or silver, and it's ageism and sexism, and it's like, she's one of the more well-known Canadian anchors. In case you didn't know, we're in Canada. And if that could happen to her, what on earth is happening to the junior people?
I don't even want to know.
It's really depressing, and that's why I think that's why I'm just like, everything has to change. Like, we can't, okay, sure, fire the guy who made the gray hair comment, but everyone that was in the room that just went with it, they're still there. So a lot of change needs to happen, and I like the morning show for kind of highlighting that there are culpable people on every level, in different roles, people in front of the camera, behind the scenes. They're just all kind of shitty.
Yep. But
so good. This was a really kind of dark conversation about people being bad, but the show is really good. I feel like we say this at the end of every video. But super entertaining, great actors, fun plot, a bit slow moving, but mad entertaining.
Yep, very. Thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you think Mitch is a bad person, or is he not? Are there bad people? Can Alex be redeemed? Let us know, and and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.